My name is Blair Williams, here today at the Cumberland County Historical Society on February 16, 2018. I'm here today with Link and Marilyn Warrell. So good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you.
Hi there.
So I'll start, Link, by asking sort of how did your family come to reside in Cumberland County?
My father worked for Ferris Tire and Rubber Company here. Before that, he worked for Lee Tire and Rubber Company in Conshohocken, Pennsylvania, right near his home. And he was good friends of the Lee family. And they were in the rubber business. And the opportunity came to Carlisle to work. And so he did that and came here in the early 1920s. My brother Carol was born in, I think, 27, and I was born in 31 here in Carlisle. My dad, I have to correct that. My brother was born here, and my father transferred and took a job at Ferris Tire and Rubber Company in Newark, Ohio, and I was born in Newark. And in 1943, Dad came back to work for Carlisle as their manager and later as their president. Carlisle Tire and Rubber Company was the largest employee here for an industry, and Maslin's was second.
So your father, Jonas, was brought here by Charles Mooney?
Yes, Mr. Mooney was the original founder and president of Carlisle Tire and Rubber Company about 1918 or thereabouts. Mm-hmm.
Did your father ever talk about Mr. Mooney at all, or did he tell you any stories?
I don't recall a great deal.
No. All right.
Maybe I got the wrong person. Was it Mr. Mooney that used to talk and he had the Rathskeller and you would all go to the Rathskeller for entertainment? That wasn't Mooney.
I don't know. I don't
Okay.
think so.
Okay.
I never met Mr. Mooney.
Oh, okay, well then it wasn't that
He was dead
man.
and gone the time I got here, I think.
Okay.
Well,
He was from Camp Hill, I remember that, yeah.
I know at least there were a few of the early employees of Carlisle Tire and Rubber who seemed to serve for a number of years with your father. Paul Monismith, Esther Mellister, and Creedy and Kruger are the three that I have here.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Did you know any of them, or?
Oh, I knew them all.
Yeah.
I knew them all. Because I started high school when Dad came back to Carlisle.
Okay.
So I had to know them. And Leo Dede was another head fellow that came also from Ferris Tire and Rubber Company as chief chemist.
Well, I'm just wondering if do you have any stories about Mr. Monismith or Miss Mellister or Mr. Kruger or?
Esther Mellister, I think you could tell they were unusual.
Well, Esther Mellister was his secretary for
Yeah.
many, many years. And she did a little bit of everything, I think, you know.
Did she type like this?
Yeah, I think she was a two-finger typer, to tell you the truth, yeah. I think it was, but fast, it was fast. Yeah.
Even after Dad had retired from the company, Esther would come over to the house and he would get caught up of all his memoirs and things that he didn't accomplish when he was working.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Now, your father served as, when he came back to Carlisle,
Yes.
Carlisle Tire and Rubber at that point was then a part of a bigger company. So he was serving as vice president and general manager until '66.
That's right. Then he became the president
Okay.
of Carlisle. The Carlisle Corporation was the parent company.
Okay.
They were in New York. They were the ones that owned Ferris Tire and Rubber Company. And so when they bought Carlisle Company from Mr. Mooney, that got merged in underneath the umbrella of Carlisle Corporation. a number of years later, it went on the over-the-counter stock exchange. It was available, open to the public.
Now, I know your brother kind of, it seemed like he followed your father into that particular line of work.
You know, my brother was 4 years older than I, and he was a industrial engineer. He worked for a number of companies, and he was brought in here to kind of understudy and to take over at Carlisle Tire and Rubber Company. But unfortunately, he had a short life and only lived to age 50, and he died of cancer. And so that was the end of that area. I only worked one summer for the Carlisle Tire and Rubber Company.
Yeah.
And I worked for Leo Dede, who was the chief chemist. And they were developing a puncture seal bicycle tire, which was new to the industry. And it was my job to go out and ride my bicycle and punch a hole in the tire every half hour to see if it would reseal. And I drove all around the county here on that bicycle with the tires getting a little lower and a little lower and a little harder to pump. That was a one-day activity.
Did that get you into an engineering career, or?
No, I was always good in sciences and mathematics, and so engineering was just a natural for me. And of course, in high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but chemical engineering was one of the more challenging ones and the more versatile studies, so you could go into any number of areas.
Sure.
So I took that. It was a very difficult course, but I got through it, and good activities. I was very, very busy in activities at Penn State University. I was president of this group, that group, and another group, and organized this, that, and the other thing. And so I was really a man all around campus rather than one of the real harder studies of chemical engineering, but I did manage to get through there in satisfactory, yeah.
And then afterwards, you went to Alcoa. But before I ask about that, did you meet Mrs. Warrell at Penn State, or I'm wondering how the two of you met?
No, I met her later on.
Okay.
After I was working with the Aluminum Company of America, and I was sent to their chemical plant out in East St. Louis, Illinois, another garden spot of the world. They used to compete with Cicero for the best town in Illinois. And I met Marilyn through a mutual friend over in St. Louis. Yeah.
Okay. And then, if I'm remembering right, you got married in St. Louis as well.
Yeah, that was all.
I was out to about a year and a half, and so we got acquainted right away, and a year later we were married. Yeah.
It's a fortuitous, I guess, year and a half then for you to get transferred out there.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I'm wondering, Marilyn, quickly, sort of after, or before you were married, were you able to meet Mr. Jonas Warrell and Carol and the family, or?
Oh, yes, I did come and meet the family, and came to Carlisle for the first time. Of course, Carlisle is not on, you live in the Midwest, Carlisle is not on the route out here. So expressly to meet them, and yeah, that's what you did in those days, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering what your first impressions of Jonas and Lillian and Carol were.
Oh, well, they loved Carlisle. They loved this place. I had never lived in a small town, so when I was transported here, I kind of came with tongue-in-cheek because I didn't know what it would be like to walk down the street and know the person across, you know, and it was really interesting. It was an evolvement, actually, but let me tell you, I have grown to love Carlisle. I think it has an awful lot to offer, and so I guess that's about it as far as Carlisle is concerned. And Mother and Dad Warrell, I thought they were so old at that time, and let me tell you, they lived on and on and on, and we're probably as old as they were when they died, right?
Yeah, whatever.
Mother Warrell, Dad lived to be 100. Yeah, so we're not 100.
My brother Carol and sister-in-law had been back to Carlisle for about 4 or 5 years, and they were very instrumental in helping us get acquainted with the people at Carlisle.
Were they?
Yeah.
So
That was Mary Ann.
yeah,
Mary Ann. Mhm.
Well, so this was after Carol was, so he was, prior to this, he was the head of, or president of Dart Wheel, is that right?
Yes. Mhm.
And so, but the plan was always then for him to sort of take over for your father, or?
You mean my brother Carol?
Yeah.
Yeah, from Dart Truck Company, which was one of the Carlisle Corporation
Was it?
entities out in
Okay.
Kansas City. When he came to Carlisle, he was going to take over for my father, yeah.
So he wanted to come back to Carlisle rather than staying out in the Midwest?
Well, I guess so,
I
yeah.
think so, yeah. But Dad lived on and on.
One of the things that I noticed going through some of the records here at the Historical Society was that the Carlisle Corporation had a lot of its annual meetings at Allenbury. And I was wondering, was that your brother's influence, or?
Well, that was one of the leading places around today to have those kind of meetings, and
Okay.
so I think it was just a natural. Whether my brother influenced or not, I don't know.
Then I know eventually they went to New York City to,
Yeah.
I think, the later years, but I noticed throughout like the 80s and the 70s that they were at
Well,
Allenbury.
my father would pretty much insist it to be local.
Okay.
He loved Carlisle, yeah.
He loved Carlisle, that's all I can say about it. And he loved the Historical Society.
Yeah.
He and his contemporaries, and you know who they were,
Mm-hmm.
Milton Flower, yeah. And they were all cronies, and so we came thinking, this is the grandest place ever through his influence. And it is.
Well, yeah, I was just reflecting back the past couple of weeks about, sort of the influence that Jonas and Milton had, as well as the Todds, and sort of, I mean, you can see it. I mean, throughout our building, just the names that are on the walls. But yeah, building this organization.
P.K. Miller.
Yep.
Oh.
Yep.
Yeah. I think they got together and decided what the town needed, and then they all pitched in and made it work. I don't know.
Well, I think of them definitely as the sort of that second generation after, that founding with Captain Miller and Professor Himes, and
Yeah,
you still see their influence today, which.
yeah, it was a good influence, I'll tell you.
No, I agree. So I know, sort of shifting gears a little bit, that it seemed like the Carlisle Corporation was always innovating, and I know it seemed like from bicycle tires to rubber to, you mentioned the puncture-resistant tires. I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit about that innovation, or if that was something that both your father and brother talked about.
Well, I really wasn't, directly involved in
Sure.
there, but as a relatively small company in the rubber industry, well, you had to be known for something special or something large, and inner tubes was one of the big business here in Carlisle, and they made from bicycle tires to great big inner tubes this big for the big trucks. I know at one time they were making 30,000 pairs of bicycle tubes a day, so that made them pretty big in that particular field. Yeah.
I'm wondering, do you remember, and this would have been after Carol's time, but do you remember the last bicycle tire, which I know hangs up in our museum?
No.
Do you remember sort of any stories about that? Or
No, well, we were all disappointed when they decided to go out of that business, and I got one that I put in my antique bicycle museum in Mount Holly Springs. It was all framed up. I have it at home now. And we got the same thing done for here, and you have one of them
Yep.
upstairs. It was just a nice remembrance.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they were the largest manufacturer of bicycle tires and tubes in the country. Yeah.
Well, one of the reasons I asked about sort of the innovation was, it seems like, and it was a bit of an influence on the company that you ended up running for a long time, the Pennsylvania Dutch Candy Company, and now the Warrell Corporation.
Yes.
So I'm wondering sort of how, I know that the two companies obviously aren't directly related, but I'm just sort of wondering the mindset, if that played an influence on you.
Well, you just learn business as you learn if you become a businessman. My brother Carol was extremely good in that regard. He was the original chairman of the board of Pennsylvania Dutch Candies, and I was vice president of sales, and the former owner, Mr. Ted Tishy, was the president, and he stayed as the president for about a year, and then when he retired, well, I took over that position. Didn't know whether I could become a president or not, having always been in sales, but I told my brother, I said, well, if it doesn't work out in a year as president, why, then I'll go back and be vice president of sales. And of course, it did work out.
Yeah. I'm wondering, so how did you come to, your family come to own the candy company?
My brother was always looking for a company that we could control or own rather than working for the larger corporations. And he called me one day in Detroit and said, did you ever hear of Pennsylvania Dutch Candies? I said, no. He said, did you ever hear of the Tishy family? I said, no. He said, well, I ran across them here in Mount Holly Springs. It's for sales. It's got a good name. They look like they got good products, and they were also in the fancy food business at the time. And he says, I think it has a potential. So he said, if you sounds interesting, I'll pursue it, and if not, I'll forget about it. And I said, well, it'll be okay. I said, go ahead and pursue it, you know. What I was really telling him is I was willing to change jobs if we found something interesting, but every couple of months he'd send me a memorandum and tell me that what progress he was making with the family. And I guess part of the story was, I said, well, how big are they? He said, their sales are almost $1 million a year. Well, my sales in Detroit were a lot bigger than that. And I said, oh, well, how much money did they make? Well, he said, I don't think they made any money yet. They've been in business for half a dozen years. And I said, well, how much do they want? And they said, $1 million. Well, back in those days, $1 million was more money than my brother and I and my dad had, or so forth. So I didn't think that was going to work. But he said, well, if you want me to continue to look at it, why, I will. If you don't, I'll forget it. I said, oh, no, take a look at it. And what I was really saying was I would be willing to change job if something worthwhile came along. And every couple of months he'd give me an update on how he was coming. Mm-hmm. And we ended up buying it for the value of the inventory, not $1 million. So and we give them 2/3 of the profits for the next 5 years. And we hired Mr. Tishy and his son-in-law, Pete Shue, for those 5 years. And so it worked out fine. And when the 5 years was up, well, Mr. Tishy was, well, he was ready to get out. I guess we got rid of him earlier, didn't we? Yeah. And but Pete stayed there with us, and Pete did a nice job with us. He was general manager, did everything as I was trying to learn the business, and when the 5 years was up, well, he was ready to move on. I said, "Oh, I want you to stay." Interesting, his wife wanted him to stay, but he decided to move on, so he did, and I developed the business from there.
You said you were in Detroit while your brother was negotiating the sale of the company. Was it still with the American Aluminum Corporation?
I was with Alcoa, right?
What were you doing with Alcoa at that point?
Oh, I did everything. I was, as a chemical engineer, they had a chemical division.
Okay.
And not only did we make aluminum oxide, which basically would get converted into aluminum, but we had a whole host of products that was used for dehydration, for absorption, for catalyst basis. I worked 2 years in automotive small catalyst and did a lot of that original work for the automobile. We were into refractories, we were into ceramics, the spark plug part of your insulators. The white part is 90% aluminum oxide. And my biggest customers was AC Spark Plug of General Motors and Champion and
So
Electric
what were you doing in
Autolite.
Detroit?
And then later on, Electric Autolite was sold to Ford Motor Company. So I was involved with all the big companies in Detroit. And there really wasn't a company in the lower Michigan or 19 counties in northwest Ohio that had a flagpole out front that I couldn't call on. We had such a diversity of products.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, Marilyn, what were you thinking this time when your brother-in-law was negotiating to buy this candy company and you're in Detroit?
I was very passive about it. I think I was passive. I thought Link needed more challenge that he was giving at the time. And he was ready to go. And I was sitting there with the family, which was 5 little girls.
We had 5 girls, so the candy had to be good and it had to sell.
And
That's all there was to it.
I came down here to look at this plant and I said, oh my gosh, like I've never seen, how can this support our family? Oh, he said, we'll have it shaped up. And of course,
I assured her it would, but I had no idea that it would.
Before I get too far up, was Carol also a chemical engineer or was he more business?
Industrial.
Industrial engineer.
Okay. The reason I was asking was just because your father was also, it seemed like he was also chemically
He was a
engineer.
chemist.
Yeah. And so I didn't know if he was sort of the business background or,
No, but he had a good business head.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you ended up, when did you purchase the company finally?
1965.
And then you said a year sort of as VP of sales and kind of learning the ropes?
you spent a year as VP of sales learning the road. I would say,
More than that.
they
Well,
had,
at least-
they're not gonna tell you problems that they had at
At
the
least, and
time.
I was always VP of sales, whether I was president or not. I
Okay.
mean, that was, the sales area was my
Yeah,
Well, I'm wondering,
expertise.
how did you go about sort of learning how to sell candy and how to make candy after being involved with the aluminum business?
Well, it was very interesting. We sold through brokers,
Okay.
and I just went out and visited with the brokers and told them who I was, what the family was doing about the business and so forth. And the brokers are not bashful people. They'll tell you about your company, good, bad, and indifferent. So if it was something negative about it, I'd go back and check it out, and I'd get it fixed. And then the broker would say, hey, this guy's going to do something. I'm going to really go out and sell for Pennsylvania Dutch. And that happened in many, many, many broker situations, and the business just began to grow and grow and grow.
What was your main product at the time that you took over initially?
Well, Buttermints was one of them. My brother was instrumental in buying Catherine Beecher candies over in Manchester. And that was one of the areas. the biggest sales areas that developed was butter toasted peanuts. That's a sugar coated peanut. And we had 2 suppliers of them, and I decided I was going to learn how to make those, and I did. And eventually we ended up making them ourselves. So butter toasted peanuts and butter mints and related products were the biggest sellers. You got peanut brittle and crunches and things of that nature related.
How much did the sort of the business change over the first, say, 10, 15 years?
How did it change?
Yeah.
Productive.
I don't know that it did change a lot, did it?
10 years.
We
10,
we
15
made more
years.
and more of our own products.
Well, I think we were always trying to be as cognizant as we could what customers needed and how the fancy food industry was kind of waning a bit. And we realized that. We loved that industry.
I really didn't say much about that, but we were also very heavily in fancy foods. And that was from A to Z of products. And we bought them, and they were in primarily in cans. And the primary market was the major department stores, because every department store had a gourmet food department.
So fancy
So-
foods being,
So that was one of the big areas more than candy.
okay. But so how would you define fancy foods? I'm just someone who isn't familiar with the term necessarily.
Well, first-class products in a can,
Okay.
like peas and beans and corn.
Pickles and,
Yeah, we had 30 different kinds of pickles. I had 30 different kinds of olives, for example. So that was big. But then there was something that came along called frozen foods. And frozen foods ate a lot better than stuff out of the can, even good stuff out of the can. So that can business went
Plummeted.
down with
Yeah.
that, and that's when we kind of phased slowly out of that and emphasized more in the candy business.
So I think that's one of the parallels I think I noticed between sort of how the Pennsylvania Dutch Candies was run and sort of the Carlisle Corporation, where it seemed like you quickly were able to shift, and
cognizant of the marketplace.
Yeah.
one of the questions I have down here is, the Warrell Corporation is still private, so I'm wondering, and I'm sure that was intentional, but was there ever any discussion to take it public, or
No,
no?
no, I wasn't interested in that. My brother wasn't interested in it. And later on, when we bought out, my brother's half interested in the business. Why, my children are not interested in selling the business. They want to keep it as a family business. And Marilyn and I don't own any shares in the company anymore. We've given it all to the children. So with our passing, there isn't any investigation or deciding what the worth of the company is. It's whatever the assets are, they are.
And is that partially from experience on just having to deal with the public markets or serving on boards, or?
Well, it's having to do less with the government interference in your business. If we would have been the major owners, as we once were, and we died, why the federal government would come in and evaluate your business, et cetera, or have it evaluated, and they might overvalue it, and to get bigger tax revenue or so forth, yeah. So this way that we've circumvented all that.
Well, I'm wondering, so was there any difficulty though in sort of having a company that was overseen by, your parents and your brother as well as you, or was the family dynamic always relatively
Oh, we
smooth?
didn't have any problems, no.
One of the reason I ask is I know your family has served on a lot of company boards such as CCMB, the Cumberland County National Bank, and I know your father also served on Farmers Trust
Yeah.
board. So one of the questions I had was there a rivalry between the two of you in terms of who had the better bank?
Well, no, I worked with both of them,
Oh, did you? Okay.
and so it was quite nice. We were always able to get money when we need to borrow it. You know, that was not a problem. That was a good feature.
Yeah.
And I was on the CCMB board myself after my brother died. I kind of more or less took his place, which was a surprise to me. But anyway, I
To be
learned.
nominated or to be nominated for the board or?
Yeah, they come and asked me to take his place. And I said, well, I have no experience or background in this area. No, that's okay, you'll learn. And so I did. I learned how banks work from inside out. And that was very helpful to me.
Was that the only sort of company, aside from your own company, is that the only board that you served on for a company, or?
You know,
I have to think now.
basically, that was my experience, yeah.
So what would you say is the main difference between serving on a for-profit companies board and say like a non-profit board like the Historical Society here or the YMCA?
Well, there isn't much difference.
Are they really similar?
Yeah, very similar. I mean, proper management's proper management, that's
Okay.
all. Yeah. Some of them, their money's requirements are a little different, or a little harder to come by, but,
One of the other things that kind of the parallels we mentioned a little bit earlier about, sort of shifting market dynamics that the Warrell Corporation's adopted to. But the other thing I noticed was that it seems to be a pretty diversified company in terms of, you mentioned initially fancy foods and candy, and even nowadays it seems like you're in a lot of markets. I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit about that sort of need for diversification, or the benefit of being diversified.
well, everybody likes candy.
Yeah.
And if you put it up and you display it well, it'll sell, no matter what kind of an outfit that you're in. I particularly like airports, for example. We serve a lot of airports. And more recently, we got one of the Hudson Foods is one of the major companies that work on airports. And they've got a new concept going, and we are probably 90% suppliers for those stores. And I think we have 9 stores that we're into that area. So that's rather large volume. But the name Pennsylvania Dutch is well recognizable. It's an attractive label and packages. And it sounds good, quality's good, and it's placed in areas where people that have money will buy it. Yeah.
At the same time, I know the company is also does a lot of contract and private label manufacturing as well. So I mean, was that a strategic aspect or?
Well, it just works out that way.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, companies buy your products, they like them, and maybe it fits their product line or so forth and so on, and they've got their own label. Well, then you do their label for them. You do whatever you want. Yeah.
There was a time where we didn't want to go that way. We wanted to get our own name out there. That's an ego type thing too. But it's too hard with TV, and we decided we would go contract manufacturing. We manufacture for just about everybody today.
Yeah.
They call and they need this or they need that, and
Yeah, we make candy for an infinite number of people,
so-
very large peoples.
So that's
A
one
little
thing.
bit for Nestle's, a little bit for Hershey's, and, you know, that type of business.
That's one thing we thought we didn't want to do, but as the time went on, and I think the market changed too.
Well, some of the companies, they start out, they don't know whether it's gonna be a big item or not. They don't wanna set up to do the manufacturing of short runs. So that leaves a big market for people like ourselves.
I know you've mentioned, like your father and you know, your brother's sort of love for the county. And I'll note that a lot of your manufacturing still is in the county. I'm sure that's intentional on your part.
In the county,
Yeah, or nearby or regional.
Yes, we thought, because of the Sugar Act, so many of the companies were going to Mexico because they get sugar on the world market. However,
well, you mean our manufacturing
Yeah.
here?
it stays here in this county. But we
Yeah,
talked about,
Yeah, pretty much. We did have Melster Candy Company out in Wisconsin that we bought.
that's
and
true.
Ran that for a long time.
And then we had a
And
little
eventually-
company,
Eventually, we sold it.
and then we had a little company up in, outside of Boston. And we made those little gourmet mints. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, it was so much fun to go up there and visit too. Oh, you just get into all kinds of
But it
things.
seems like it's still a philosophy of keeping manufacturing local, or at least,
Yeah, if you can, sure, keep it all under one roof. We have a huge plant here in Camp Hill. I mean, we could handle a lot more than we handle, you know.
I'm wondering, has that always been the plan? Or I know at various times I see references to Mount Holly being sort of the
Well, Mount
headquarters.
Holly Springs was our original plant.
Okay.
And then we bought Catherine Beecher over in Manchester. And I expanded the Manchester plant, I think, 3 times till I ran out of land. And so I combined Mount Holly and Manchester over in a new plant over in Camp Hill. And so we have lots of room over in Camp Hill.
I'm wondering, what was the process like of sort of finding that location and maybe building the plant?
Did we build a new?
No, so yeah, so
Yeah.
what was the process of, I guess, finding that location in Camp Hill and sort of building that plant, or
Well,
maybe retrofitting it?
Well, you had to look for, it's too expensive to build a new plant.
Okay.
So you had to look for a plant that was available. And this one was available, and we looked at it for a couple of years. First year, I didn't think it was gonna be suitable. And had a few leaks in the roof and whatnot and so forth. And a year later, it was still available, we still needed space, and they fixed the roofs and so forth, and I went in and fixed more roofs. And it was large enough to merge the Mount Holly plant and the Manchester plant into one. So that's what we did, and then we sold the other 2 off.
What did the plant do prior to you purchasing it? Do you remember, or?
What was in that plant
Yeah,
was a food plant.
okay. Do you remember the company, or?
Frozen food, it was fish, a fish plant.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, and everybody was so happy when the candy smell came out rather than the fish smell.
I know, I went to, my undergraduate degree is from Elizabethtown, and so I think there's a Mars plant there.
Oh,
So
yeah.
when the wind blows, you get the chocolate smell, so I
Yeah.
agree, it smells much nicer than
Yeah.
when the wind blows the other way and you get all the agriculture.
I know.
They had Simon's Candy Company over there too. As their tent, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
we just, I guess, we've had a lot of fun with it.
Anyway, it's that location's
Worked
worked
hard.
out very well.
Worked hard.
And most of the employees from Mount Holly went there, and people from Manchester went there. At least the key people did anyway.
Blair, I'm going to challenge you to go and visit the plant.
Oh, yeah,
It's really, you will be surprised
Well,
to
you
see
said
all
you were
these.
there, weren't you?
What?
Didn't you say you went to the plant?
No, I haven't.
Oh, okay.
So I'll have to take it up on your
Would
offer.
you be welcome to come?
Yes, you would.
I usually go out there on Wednesdays now.
Well, I did notice when I was doing research for the interview that you tend to take long weekends.
Yeah, that's right,
Going on Wednesdays.
yeah.
Well, that was one of the things I was going to ask too. I'm assuming that with a family board that there's tight control over the company. But I'm wondering if you could speak of any notable employees you've had over the years. You mentioned a couple of the early employees.
Well, Dick Billman was an outstanding employee. When the 5 years was up with our purchase and Pete Shue left, I found this young fellow by the name of Dick Billman, and he came in and became our general manager and worked with me till he retired just a few years ago.
Yeah.
So he was
He grew up with the company.
Yeah.
People don't do that any
a
longer, but
great thing. A fellow by the name of Bob Lebo was our accountant, and he was very helpful and very
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. I'm afraid by mentioning names, we're gonna forget somebody that
Well,
was
I can mention it. Well, I know a few that I came across.
Okay,
And I don't know, maybe I'm getting them wrong, but Huffman? Is that her name?
Pat Huffman,
Pat Huffman?
yeah. He was a fellow I've known for about 30 years. He's well entrenched in the candy industry, and I got him to come in to work for us. And he left us about, what, 2 years ago now? Time marches on.
time marches on, I think it's a
Yeah.
little more than that.
Well, so one of the reasons I brought up him, and you'll have to excuse my ignorance, I don't know that much about the candy industry, but I know you and him share a pretty prestigious award with the Kettle Award.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you could describe that a little bit.
Well, there are people basically that have been in the candy industry for a long time, have had responsible positions, and have done a lot to promote the industry in general. Represent us in Washington and so forth and so on. We've done all those things, yeah.
That's about the highest award you can get, the Kettle Award,
Yeah.
and, yeah.
Well, that, and I know you were inducted into the Candy Hall of Fame too.
That's just a different group. It's
Is it?
similar responsibilities
But,
and
yeah.
things, yeah.
And it's hard when a little company like us, or I guess they consider us maybe medium-sized, go up against Hershey, go up against Mars, go up, it's kind of, it's kind of hard, but over the years,
Well, I'm wondering, maybe,
Link has really been an icon in the industry.
But
and
it
it's-
is and it isn't, because the employees of the major big companies, they don't tend to get involved in all the outside work. They just work for the company. So it's not a problem.
well, it's getting a little off track, which I mentioned might happen, but
Yeah.
I'm wondering, what is it about sort of this area in the mid-Atlantic with maybe even central Pennsylvania that, I guess, promotes the candy industry? I mean, because I know you mentioned Elizabethtown with Mars, and I know they're headquartered in Virginia, but Hershey's about, what, an hour away?
Yeah.
What is it about this area that,
Well, it's all of Pennsylvania. It's, there's just lots of companies here, that's all. And there's a very strong organization called the Pennsylvania Manufacturing Confectioners Association. And that kind of pulls everybody together, and it's lots of recognition. They do a lot. They have a lot of seminars and whatnot. We've had them in our plant 2 different times for a week at a time, where companies throughout all the United States would send their people in to learn what you do, or learn how to pan items, for example, like the sugar coat almonds or something of that type.
so it sounds like at the same time you're competing against, Hershey and Nestle and Mars. I know you also do some manufacturing for them, but you're also, I guess, working together, it sounds like. Both.
Yeah, they're in a different plane. They've got their own label, they've got their own distribution set up, et cetera. And when I got into business in 65. The theme was, at that time, was that we only sold where they didn't. I mean, they didn't go to the gift shops. They didn't go to the roadside stands. They didn't go to the retail restaurant places. And that's where we went. We went where they weren't. And as I said earlier, you could sell candy anywhere where you make a nice presentation and a nice package. And so you didn't directly compete with us, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. We even had the former president and chairman of the board of Hershey come on our board of directors for us, for example. He and I were Penn State freshman friends, and I'd see him from time to time, and I asked him, would he like to, after he retired from Hershey, I said, hey, how would you like to keep up with the candy industry and come on our board of directors? He said, I think I'd like that. He said, let me check and see if it's okay. Well, I don't know who he checked with, but they said, you do whatever you want to do. So he was on our board for about 5 years or so, or maybe more than that.
Yeah, more than that, yeah.
And he's recently retired, and about 2 years ago, and died a year ago. But that gives us some pretty good input too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, I'm guessing he was in the candy industry for a long time.
He was the president of Hershey.
Yeah, so what was his impression when you first told him that you were getting into the industry? Do you remember, or?
We would see one another at meetings and so forth. And of course, Hershey always had their limos and so forth, that brought their people. Yeah. And one time were we getting in we had a little airplane to get us around. And he was going commercial or something like that. Do you remember that? And he said, too bad, too bad.
Well, I ran into him one night at a cocktail party at the Candy Wholesalers in Chicago. And it was a crowded room, et cetera, et cetera. Hi. I says, what do you do? He said, I'm over at Hershey, I'd asked him 3 times what the hell he did at Hershey. And he said, I'm the president. I didn't know that. And then later on, I asked him if he would like to join our board. He said, well, yeah. He said, let me check it out. See if it's okay, and it was, and so we had his input for quite a number of years on our board of directors. So, and again, that probably goes way back to the time I worked for Alcoa. You weren't afraid to get the big boys into your business, even if you were a little business. Yeah.
The other name that I jumping back now, the other name that I came across. I'm silly enough, I didn't write down his first name, but I know he's your son-in-law, Silva, Mr. Silva.
Kevin.
Silva.
Kevin, yeah, I thought it was Kevin. But
Yeah.
Kevin, yeah.
I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit, because I think he's increasingly taking over the business. Or maybe not, but.
Yeah, well, he's been president for a while now.
Sure.
Unfortunately, he wants to move on, and I've got to find a new president. So we're looking for a new president right now. But he has done a good job and helped our business in any number of areas. I'm kind of disappointed to see him wanting to move on, but he wants to move on. He wants to move on.
Yeah. What?
He thinks that he's given it all he can give, and he thinks that we can do a lot more if somebody was capable of doing more.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking.
Yeah. And we have a son that's very, very involved in the business also.
Okay.
But, probably not quite ready to take over. It's a very complex business. You think it's just easy, but
No.
it really is. There's just so many avenues from that business that it's difficult.
We have 7 different manufacturing areas in our plant, and most companies have 1 or 2.
Yeah, well, that goes back to what I was Same with Carlisle Corporation with the tire company. It seemed like they were doing a little bit of everything just to keep up with everyone else. But diversification.
Well, I think you have to do that today.
Yeah.
You get eaten alive.
It seems like even the bigger companies are doing that as well now.
Yeah. Well, we kind of went over this. As we said, Hershey didn't sell all the hook nooks and crannies that they sell today. They weren't a holiday type thing, and depended on other people to do that. Well, let me tell you, they're in for the big time now. So they're into everything, whether it's Valentine's, whether it's, Easter, in gift shops, Hershey's all over. And that, maybe they've missed that avenue for so long.
Yeah.
And,
Actually, so I probably should have asked this earlier, but and I know you mentioned it briefly, but I'm wondering, sort of, how did your father, after he retired and he came onto your board of the candy company, I'm wondering what insights did he have?
I think just keeps on a sound basis and makes money.
Yeah.
I can tell you one thing that he did. He was interested, and we have a little a candy school in Erie.
Okay.
And tell him about your mother and he going up to that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
The industry has a candy school for was it a week, I guess.
Oh, I thought it
Maybe
was
2
longer
weeks,
than
maybe
that,
it's
but-
2 weeks. And up in Gannon College. And I just didn't have time to go. I was too busy
Yeah.
out selling and doing and running things at the plant and da. So my father agreed to go. And of course, he was the oldest guy that ever went there. He says, I only got one requirement to go. He said, I want to stay in the hotel instead of the hot dormitories in the summertime. So they permitted him to do that. And he was probably one of the smarter guys, as being a chemist in background of most of the students. So he was remembered.
And he
well
brought
in
mother,
that
and
area.
oh yeah. So he was interested, but he was. Can I say he was up in years by that time?
Sure.
Was he 80, something like that?
Yeah, probably 80 years old.
Yeah, so he wasn't learning too much, but he was interested enough to really learn how you make candy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not easy,
Oh, no.
so.
Well, I know we talked about this earlier, but he was heavily involved here at the Historical Society. And so I'm just wondering if you could sort of talk about sort of maybe his involvement with the Historical Society, and maybe did he introduce you to the Historical Society, or?
I would say yes. He's always been interested in history and whatnot, and this is one of the things that he kind of took under his wings. And
Yeah, lucky.
I won't say the Historical Society was floundering in those early days, but they weren't the liveliest thing in the world either. And
Yeah.
I think Dad did a lot of things for this organization. Got them financially stable, for example. Got them some cash flow and some income, and hired some people. So it's just one of his hobbies or things of areas of interest.
Yeah. I'm wondering, was he particularly interested in a certain aspect of history, or?
No, just in general.
Okay,
I guess not. He liked for things to be preserved.
sure.
And when our church moved from Pomfret Street out to the new, the bishop said, "Oh, we can't have two churches." He said, "Well, you can't tear this down. They'll never build churches like this again," and they are not, And so I can say that there was an interest in preserving things.
Yeah.
Is this St. Patrick's, or?
This St. Patrick's Day. yeah. And he was very much involved down there too, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know why. I'm speaking for myself here, but I'm very thankful for both sort of that legacy. And I know we often get comments today about sort of people are surprised about how much we do here at the Historical Society and how big the museum is, and sort of the art. They're surprised by the number of artifacts that we preserve. So,
Yeah.
and I think you're right. It goes back to sort of I guess the first people, and then that generation of Milton Flower.
Claire, these people were just raised differently.
Yeah.
They just were raised different, and I was raised different from you, you
Yeah.
know. But
I kind of vaguely remember we built this room.
Yeah.
This was an addition.
Yeah.
this was the Todd, huh?
Yep. Yeah, it's still the Todd Hall.
Todd Hall,
So
yeah.
I remember seeing a photograph. I think with I don't know if it was a hole, like the roof, because the other building had fallen in. I think that's how this got built.
Okay.
The land suddenly became vacant when the other building burned down.
Yeah,
I've noticed that happens a lot around here.
yeah,
The buildings around us.
yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm wondering, so I know your family was also involved with the hospital, I think, serving on boards over there and at the YMCA. Was there a particular interest in those organizations, or do you remember?
It was just a thing to do.
Was it?
Or they come and ask you to help them. Yeah.
I was on the hospital board for a while, and yeah, it needed a lot of help,
Did it?
and nice people. Bob Chilton has his name come up here in the Historical Society.
It
He was
might,
very much
I
involved in the
it's a name
community.
I've heard.
I think Dad was chairman of the Carlisle Hospital for 17 years or something like that.
And he went there every day. But that was his life, Blair. That was absolutely his life, and he loved it. Yeah, yeah.
Well, it's probably something that you've noticed, Link, that it's good to be active in retirement, or in your case, semi-retirement maybe.
Yeah. That's
Still going to work, though.
I'm pretty well retired.
Yeah, yeah.
I go out there and I just talk to the people, walk through the plant, tell them they're doing a nice job, and that gives them a little enthusiasm.
Yeah.
But Kevin Silva and the staff out there really run things. Yeah.
Well,
And that's the way it should be,
yeah.
you know.
So what do you do when you're not, or I guess every other day but Wednesday? What are you up to nowadays?
Well, I read the Carlisle Sentinel, I read the Harrisburg paper, and I read the Wall Street Journal. That takes most of the morning. Okay. I go to Rotary on Thursdays, and the rest just fills in, right?
Yeah, yeah. We're busy, always busy.
Well, so what's a normal day for you, like, Marilyn?
Well, it's just kind of the same. I do have my bridge groups and things like that I go to.
I'll have to get connected with you. I remember playing bridge when I was younger, and when I went to college, there were no places to play, so I've now forgotten all the rules, but all the bidding rules, I should say.
Oh, yeah.
Conventions.
Well, they kind of went out of style for young people, I think. And I don't know if it's, when I was in college, they had rooms just to play bridge.
Did they?
You can go and do that, but
I used to love playing contract bridge.
I'll bet you did.
Well, it was just my brother and I was the fourth one, so I had to learn to play bridge when I was in grade school.
Did you?
Yeah. I used to play bridge, yeah. Nice to play bridge once a week, yeah, the group.
Yeah, the link goes every week and plays bridge. I have a couple groups.
Well, I'm wondering, I guess, maybe the last sort of big question here.
We have a big family. It keeps us very busy.
You mentioned 5 daughters and
2 sons.
2 sons.
Yeah, so, keeps us busy. In fact, we've got one coming up tomorrow, I guess, from, she lives in Puerto Rico, and coming coming up, she has a daughter that she's getting her master's. And what do you do, a thesis or a dissertation for a master's?
It
Dissertation.
depends. I think it's a thesis, but I think you can
A thesis?
get out of that. Yeah, I got out of those for my degrees.
Well,
Where did you
she'd
go?
probably be in the same.
Were you
So-
Shippensburg?
No, so I'm originally from southern Vermont, so I got my undergraduate degree, as I said, at Elizabethtown, but then I went closer to home for the master's at the
Elizabethtown.
University of Albany, SUNY.
Okay, yeah.
Oh,
So,
oh,
yeah.
cold.
Well, I love the cold, so. But the one thing I wanted to ask too was, you can speak to this too, Marilyn, sort of, how has Carlisle sort of changed since you first saw it, or maybe?
Well, it's a lot more friendly town today and a lot more
Is
open town. It's much more diversified with the people that have moved here in the last 50 years. It's quite different. Carlisle was a pretty much closed town when we first got acquainted with it. My brother was very helpful in getting us to get
You mentioned
acquainted.
it, yeah.
Yeah.
Was that just introducing you to people, or
Even when I was in high school, it was a tough place to get acquainted.
was it?
Yeah. I mean, people grew up from grade school with everybody. They had their own friends. And the high school always put all the new people in the same homeroom. So all the out-towners came in, and all the people that lived in the country came into that realm. So you never had anyone in your homeroom that lived in Carlisle that you could do with anything. Okay? And all the other homerooms, they all had their friends from back from
Yeah.
grade school. So it was tough. It's tough.
Well, I think you have to make it home and just go
Yeah.
and do things. That's what I think. And I think family was important, but no time at all. Of course, I had the little ones, and you immediately had contacts with people, with children, and so I didn't think of it. You had to go to the right church.
Was that?
Do you have any more questions you want to ask, or you're pretty well through your
Well,
list?
actually, well, I have here, you mentioned church. I'm just wondering, I'm guessing it was St. Patrick's? or
Oh, yeah.
Sort of, what was St. Patrick's like, and maybe how is it, what's it
Oh,
like
my
now?
golly, it was, my kids went to the school downtown, which is now the, kind of a nursery school type thing.
Okay.
And, yeah, it was just so tiny, but you know what, they thrived, it was fine. And then they built the new school out there, and people wondered why in the world did we need a new school and church, but let me tell you, it just grew and blossomed. So everything is more open, and, yeah, it all works out.
So,
But in the 40s or 50s, the church downtown on Pomfret Street was sufficiently to handle all the parishioners.
yeah,
I don't know, we must be 10 times bigger today
Wow.
than we were then. Yeah.
just I'm wondering, working a lot with Second Pres and sort of on the history of that church. I'm wondering, what role has St. Patrick's played in your life since you've been in Carlisle?
Oh, golly, I don't know, you're looking for something very philosophical.
Or not, or I mean, you mentioned that it was important in terms of meeting
It's
people.
very
so just
important to me because I am a very, I consider myself a religious person. And my children all went to St. Patrick's. Well, if your children didn't go to the public school,
Yeah,
they didn't have many contacts, but with the kids that they went to school with. So that was a difficult part. But we had some families here that were wonderful. I could see the Fowler family. They were wonderful coming. Did you know George Elaine Fowler?
I don't know.
They were very active in everything. He was an attorney in town. And and you just mushroom from one thing to another. And you got to...
It depends on how far when you want to go back.
We'll go as far back as you
It
want.
used to be that when Monsignor Schmidt would come up the street, and there was another pastor coming the other way from Protestant things, one of them would go across the street. okay? They just didn't talk. And I forget what year it was that it was decided that they wanted to form a Carlisle Council of Churches. And I was drafted from Carlisle along with one of the ladies,
Catherine Zeilberg.
Catherine Zeilberg, to represent St. Patrick's into that group. And that was interesting because the pastors from the other groups and the representatives of the other groups, they didn't know any Catholic people. And they were aloof. And they were so happy to find that we were normal people, that we were friendly people, etc. And after, a year or 2 years, I ended up president of that group for 2 years. And that really brought that whole community together because they didn't know each other.
So
I won't say they didn't like each other, they just know each other. That's the better way to put it.
They have become more ecumenical, I
And,
think. I think religion has become.
And so that is still going on now, the ecumenicalism. And I think that helped bring the people in Carlisle together. It was a big breakthrough.
But I'm trying to think schools, life is different. Life is different. That's like saying when you got out of school, how's everything changed? Yeah, because I guess you're out of.
I haven't changed, it hasn't changed that much, but you're right, it has changed a little bit, so I can only imagine what,
It's
10 years from
changing,
now.
Years, yeah. Oh my, you don't think about it because you're so busy doing what you have to do every
Yeah.
day. Yeah. Yeah.
I just want to follow up quickly, like, when was this, when were you involved with the Council of Churches?
I don't know, a long time ago.
Well, we came here in 65, and so it had to be between 65 and then probably around 70.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, this was kind of before, or maybe a little bit after your family was being a lot, or heavily involved with the community, or at least you were involved with the community? Because you said people just didn't know you, or didn't know many Catholics.
Yeah, they didn't.
I don't, yeah.
No. There was a negative viewpoint from Protestants if you were a Catholic. That's the way to put it.
And Carlisle is a relatively Protestant town, I've noticed.
Yeah,
Very Protestant. Now, are you pretty Protestant?
but it's quite different today, though. The Catholics are very well accepted today in everything. And of course, we have a very large parish.
Yep.
I mean, we might be, 5 times bigger than the next biggest parish, or something like that.
Protestant church as well. Yeah. I think the evangelicals are growing, and we have just a real pocket of Christianity here. Our church it has every ministry you could ever think of. If ever you need a ministry, go over there. You'll find it.
All right, well, I always like to end, actually, you know what? There was one thing I did want to ask, and sorry to keep you so long, but I noticed that your father served in World War I,
Yes, it did.
and your brother served in World War II.
That's right.
I'm wondering if they told you any stories about their service, or if you remember hearing anything about their service?
Oh, I remember my father saying many, many times, I walked from one end of France to the other.
Yeah?
Yeah. And I walked through the exhibit out at the War College right now, which if you haven't seen is worthwhile.
Okay.
It's all about World War I. My father would have really enjoyed that and could relate to quite a number of the scenes that are in that museum today. He'll be there for another month or so.
I'll have to go.
Yeah.
Blair, when Dad was in service in World War I, he wrote a diary. Every day he wrote a diary, what he ate, where he went. And actually, we have given the diary to the AHEC. And they would have it there, and gave all his uniform and all that sort of thing to AHEC, thinking that that's where it should go. I think it was to AHEC, was it not?
Yeah.
You didn't give it to the historical
An
society?
interesting thought to find about that diary, somebody stole it towards the end of World War I. They
Really?
stole his backpack and the diary was in there, et cetera, et cetera. And anyway, a couple of years later, somebody called on my mother to give him back to the diary. And he had found it on a dead man. The guy that stole it
Yeah.
was probably killed. And she thought that she was probably widowed. And of
Well,
course.
they weren't married
so
at that
that's-
time, but they were.
He got his diary back.
Not the backpack.
Yeah, and that's the one that's now here.
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Oh,
No, not here.
it's at AHEC.
Yeah, it's at,
Yeah.
there's a copy of it here too, I think, isn't there?
Do you
I didn't
have,
see one, but I'll take a
I
look.
think
do you
there
have
is.
any interest in military history?
My interest is more, I enjoy what we're doing right now, just hearing personal stories. So
Okay.
I like the military history as it relates to, the individual stories. that
Stories,
are
one,
told.
yeah, one story at a time, isn't that what they say?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
it had to be, it had to be sometime, that First World War, we
Oh, yeah.
never, I mean, it was just unbelievable that we won it. Yeah, and what would we be like today if we had not, huh?
yeah.
Oh, my history goes on and on, right?
I think the Historical Society have a copy of that.
Oh, yeah, I'll take a look.
I think so. I think he made a number of copies and gave them out.
Okay. Who was he?
Dad,
Of the diary.
Oh, okay.
So I'm wondering, did Carol ever talk about his service, or did he serve?
he wasn't in too long.
Okay.
I don't think
Was the
so.
war over when he went in, like?
Yeah, World War II was really over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Korean War hadn't started.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have been in the Korean War, except I was declared 4F. I couldn't see good enough. I said, well, I'm healthy other than that. Can I do some office work? Nope, we're only taking A1s now. So I never got in the service. I had ROTC at Penn State, but that was it.
When you live in an army town like this, and I consider this an army town,
Yeah, definitely.
you do feel a little bit left out, I think, because so many military are there. Now, have you been in service yet?
I am not. No.
No. They're telling their stories, and there's a real camaraderie among them, I guess.
Yeah.
And so I feel bad about Link not having to share that, but it wasn't a picnic to be in it at the time, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, so I'll end by asking: is there anything I should have asked, or that you want to say before we stop recording, or?
No, I'm just amazed at all the stuff that we've talked about and
Yeah.
whatnot.
I think this is a wonderful idea to record. I do want to say that Maureen Reed was after us many, many years before Dad Warrell died. She always said, well, let's go to the nursing home with a mic and hear his stories. And I think it was too late, yeah. And so I called her last evening. I said, oh, we're going down, we're going to talk with you. And she said, it's just wonderful. She said, I'm so happy. I said, it's time.
Well, Marine's someone I need to interview, so I'll have to bug her.
Oh, she will be a bubbly. Yeah, she loves this town
Yep.
almost as much as Dad Warrell. If you want to take her any place, she'd much prefer to go to lunch here in town.
Okay. Sure.
I mean, not that you know, I meant that's just how much she loves the town. Because
Yeah.
so when we live here, we kind of think, oh, isn't it nice to get out of town?
Now, I'm a homebody, so.
Okay.
I can tell you one little story that
Yeah.
you might find of interest. I was very active in the Boy Scouts.
Okay.
From everything, and from summer camps and learning how to swim and how to teach down in national camps and out the one out in Arizona. And I had a chance to go to 1947 to go to the World Jamboree over in France. And so that was quite something because people my age in that time frame didn't have a chance to go to Europe like they do today.
Yeah.
And I absorbed a lot and spent a couple days in Paris with the groups and so forth and so on. So years later, we're over on a candy tour with the Retail Confectioners International Group, visiting candy shops basically. And we're in Paris, and we go down to get on the bus in the morning to have the grand tour of the city and go visit all these shops. And we didn't have a tour director.
Oh, the guy didn't show up.
The driver, he didn't speak any English, and he thought, well, we thought you had
A guide, yeah.
a driver. So it ended up that I was the tour director in Paris. I had the map, and I could read it, and I could speak my high school French a little bit. Ici, mean here. So we went here, and we saw all the stores we were supposed to see, not necessarily on the timetable we were supposed to see them.
Yeah.
But I escorted the whole group around Paris. Interesting.
Were you involved at all with the Boy Scouts in Carlisle? Or?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I got my Eagle Scout
He
here.
was on the Boy Scout board, yeah. And he,
He's the first Eagle Scout of our troop there at St. Patrick's. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, when there's a new Eagle Scout, and we've had so many Eagle Scouts, they always call him over to come to the ceremony. And
Oh, yeah.
he cheers them on a little bit about their projects.
In the valley, I think I worked probably 4 years out there, all during college, on the waterfront. Was head of the waterfront for a couple of years for the swimming and rowing and life savings and all that. I was pretty active in my younger days.
Well, it seems like you're still pretty active, just in a slightly different way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still
Life
get
changes.
around.
Life changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
it's
Does
what-
that cover everything pretty well?
I hope so. I think so too. So, well, thank you so much for coming in today and for all the time that you've spent here.